Good evening. Just doing a mic check here. Leon, can you just let me know that you can hear me? Can you just let me know you can hear me? Yeah, super. Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome to this session that'll be delivered by myself. So for those that don't know me, I am Chris Hunter. I'm the regional pitch advisor for the Grounds Management Association. The Grounds Management Association is a regional is a body that represents the ground industry and works on behalf of the grounds industry, providing a pitch advisory service which gives recommendations to grassroots clubs, pitch advice training, not just to grassroots as well, also to the professional industry. So we work on behalf of several governing bodies, the FA, the RFU, the RFL and the ECB. So we work across sport, trying to improve facilities, mainly grass pitches. So this workshop is delivered with Sheffield County FA. There's also some clubs on the call from Nottingham County FA and from North Riding County FA. So I've got quite a vast geographical range of people on the call. So saying that my role is in the northeast, I would be in a Yorkshireman, class the northeast as Northumberland, Durham, etc. But my role does include Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire as well, currently at this stage, but that changes as of the 1st of April. So there's no major changes apparent for anybody in this group. Things will continue as normal, just a little bit of a shift round of regions for staff that work for the GMA. So for the people on the call that are from Nottingham, as of the 1st of April, one of my colleagues, Julian Morris, will be taking over Nottinghamshire. And that will be a slow process. It won't be quick. So please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any problems. So the objectives of this session, I'm going to take you through quite a few slides. They're not text heavy, very much picture orientated and imagery. Just discussing how to get the best out of renovations and how to understand how we can get the best out of grass pitch renovations. It's been a really challenging winter. There's a lot of clubs under flooding. Everyone's in the same boat. No pun intended there. Facing the same challenges of trying to get games on through what's been a really challenging winter, where we've seen the highest amount of rainfall since records began in 1871. I've pretty much summed it up to a club that I visited earlier. So I've been out and about in Sheffield today, looking at a few grass pitches and a few of the clubs that are taking advantage of the maintenance funding. And we were looking at average rainfall figures, and pretty much by January we'd had what we would expect to get over the whole of the winter period. So yeah, we've had exceptional amount of rainfall. It's been really challenging. A lot of clubs have had a lot of cancellations, but the thing that's really stood out for me is the pride that quite a lot of clubs have taken in the grass pitches and the way that they've protected them, where maybe in the past games may have been played in conditions that they shouldn't have been. Pitches have actually been protected, so there's quite a lot of pitches that are coming out in quite a good position. Obviously not from a saturated perspective where they're waterlogged, but in a case of where grass coverage aren't really being affected. And maybe there can be ways that we could look at things a little bit differently because of the changing climate conditions that we're seeing up and down the country. I mean, my colleague in the northwest has certainly had it a lot worse, but we've had rain coming in from the east as well, which is not usual, which is why we've probably seen the rainfall that we have. Just to give you some form of idea on the amount of rainfall that we've had. So by the end of January, if you take a hectare, which is probably just a football, an average adult football pitch, is around 8,000 square meters. So if you take that up to 10,000 square meters, which is a hectare, which is maybe just a little bit larger than a football pitch, if you were to tip an Olympic swimming pool and 3/4 on that pitch, that's pretty much the rainfall that we had by the time we got to January. And it's certainly changed as I've gone up and down the country. Some have had it worse than others, but typically with the clubs that are a little bit more southern based that are on the call. You may not think that, but some of the clubs up in the north of the country, in Northumberland, etc., have had a very, very, very challenging winter, and temperatures there are a little bit slower to creep up. Where down here, Yorkshire and into Nottinghamshire, we're quite lucky that temperatures are actually getting up to what we would require for renovations. All up, some pitches are saturated, which is going to throw other challenges. Temperatures are rising. I think the biggest concern is looking at what we could foresee over the next few months. So, will we go through into a drought where we could potentially see no rainfall for weeks on end, like we did last year? So we're coming out of pretty much saturated conditions. I know one point last year I was driving around in Leeds and temperature was 42 degrees. That's pretty much unheard of. So these extreme weather conditions are certainly throwing up various challenges, and I'm aware some of you are volunteers. So I'm going to try and pitch this at a level. It seems to have gone down well in some of the other counties that I've delivered this session online and face to face as well. So hopefully you can get something out of it, and hopefully you can take something that you can either present to your clubs or makes you maybe think a little bit more outside the box, because that's certainly what I'm trying to have to do at the moment, and the majority of the turf industry is having to do. There's different ideas being thrown out there and different ways that we can try and combat what we're seeing. It's proving very challenging. Innovative or inventative ideas, should I say, probably the best way to put it, are coming out, things that have never been thought of. So yeah, for those who aren't aware, the turf industry moves quite fast. It certainly has done over the last 20 years. With obviously, as we've gone from a clay-based pitch, what we would see in used to seeing in the professional industry, to now sand-based constructions, how we can adapt soils and how we can make them more freely draining, different drainage systems that are available. I think the challenge is that it's all right putting a drainage system in, but where do we send that water to? As you've seen, especially for the clubs that are on here from Nottingham, I know Nottingham got really badly hit over the Christmas period and into the early part of this year. And to be honest, I was down there a couple of weeks ago and it's still not great, similar to some of the parts of Sheffield as well that I'm seeing. And I live in York, so for the clubs that are on here from North Riding, we've had challenges as well up in the northern parts of Yorkshire and into the top part of Middlesbrough, etc. It's been a challenging winter, but we'll see what so hopefully we can take something from this. And what I think I'm trying to do is just trying to get clubs to be a little bit more proactive. I think I was saying this to I've said this to several clubs when I worked in the industry. So my background is quite varied. I've worked across sport at professional and amateur level. I have worked as a lecturer for a little stint where I was working at a college in York, a land-based college, teaching sports turf management, and now I'm working for the GMA as a pitch advisor. I think what I was trying to encourage, and I used to try and encourage this into students and staff that I used to work with, is to try and think of the way that we change things. We would in a professional world, we would think of drainage in the summer and irrigation in the winter. The reason that we would do that is because you can work soils in the summer, so you can try and put them into the best position possible ahead of going into a challenge. What potentially could be a challenging winter. Even if it isn't a challenging winter, you're prepared for any weather conditions that can come at you. Similar to the winter period, we would make sure that if we did have irrigation systems, I mean, I'm looking more at professional things here, but I know that was certainly a challenge for some grassroots clubs, and there is other methods that we can do to look at drought tolerance and trying to make our pitches a little bit more tolerant to drought. So what I can discuss here is I'll just take you through a few points in ways that we can think to put yourself in the best position. Unless you've got amazing facilities, it's pretty challenging at the moment to be able to do that, but getting the basics right puts you on a good foot, certainly as you go into different parts of the year. and different seasons. We're now in spring, which is fantastic because it's been a long winter. I think pretty much the last 3 months, 70% of my week's been spent around drainage inquiries. So, yeah, no surprise there really for anybody on the call. So the first point that I'll touch on is decompaction. So we've obviously come out of a time. I mean, I pretty much said there that, you know, if you imagine even just one Olympic swimming pool sat on your pitch, it's a lot of pressure that's sat there. So you've also got the force of if any play's taken place. I know there's been a lot of cancellations and not every club's had games ongoing throughout the season. Even more so, those pitches will require this. So decompaction is not to be confused with aeration. It's a good way of sort of describing. We have two operations. So after this slide, I'll take you through and I'll show you a couple of machines that do that and how they do that. But this is a good imagery that shows you how a deep tine drives into the soil. So this would be a tractor mounted machine, not pedestrian. We want some weight behind it to be able to drive into the soil. So you've got a tine that goes down and it has a heave. As you can see, can you see my mouse, Leon? Yeah, certainly excellent. So Leon is on the call as well here from Sheffield County FA. I'm sure you've seen him in the call. I'm not too sure. Leon sat right next to me actually. Is Michelle and Chris on the call at the moment?
Chris is up onto Michelle.
Right, okay, so Chris is on here from North Riding as well. So yeah, this would be a tractor mounted machine that would drive into the soil and it would fracture the subsoil. So for pitch standards, typically you'd have a minimum of 100 millimeter of topsoil. Hopefully, it's not always the case, but the majority of pitches, I would say, have 100 to 150 mil of topsoil. We want to get below that depth and we want to drive into the subsoil. What we're wanting to do is open the soil to allow the grass plants to be able to breathe, especially after they've had a challenging winter, being suffocated by water, having little access to oxygen, to be able to breathe and photosynthesize, etc. So we're trying to get them into the best position possible. So by driving that time down, we're allowing the pitch to recover. So what this actually can do, if it can give you a free fertilizer hit as well, because majority of clubs return the clippings to the pitches, which is normal practice in a grassroots, even in some of the early stage, even in some of the early steps of professional football. The reason for that is because if you remove them, you've got large demands of really. The consequences of removing them is that you will probably incur extra costs in fertilizer inputs, particularly in nitrogen, as that is a key nutrient that is removed from removing plant growth when you are boxing off, for example, and you're getting rid of the clippings. So what these tines do is they drive down into the ground, fracture the subsoil, fracture the topsoil, and allow roots to get down, allow the plant to get stronger. So if you imagine that you were to take out a large tree, it really makes it really difficult to get out compared to making a small tree. Grass is exactly the same. So when you've got players running over the top of it, we want to try and see if we can get some stability to the surface so that players can get good traction, so that this grass isn't easily kicked out. It's well rooted, good deep rooted grass. This is a good way of encouraging it. So you're creating these pores in the soil where roots can drive into, and they can actually go down these little cracks that you're making in the soil, and they can then become a lot more established within the soil and are really not as easy to disturb. So thatch, when you're returning clippings, if you're breaking that down, you're actually getting, as I say, a free fertilizer hit, which is ideal for especially as we come out of this. The way that works is that soil microbiology and how plants will basically eat dead grass, recycle it, and the plant can uptake it, and the plant can use it to be able to enhance its growth. So you can get like a nice couple of weeks little hit of getting some nice green grass. You'll see that it'll start to look a little bit more healthy. The timing of this is key, is that it can't be done in saturated conditions, so when the pitches are wet. So if that's still a bit of a long way away. I mean, the wind was picking up today when I was in Sheffield. Pitches are starting to dry out a little bit. Some clubs have been fortunate enough to be able to do this already. If you haven't done, this should be number one on your priority list for as we come out of this wet period. So as soon as your soils are workable, by that I mean that you're not leaving footprints, you're not sinking into the soil. You could get a tractor on there with some weight on the back, and it could drive into the soil. But you cannot do this in dry weather because it pulls the turf and it'll just create an uneven surface, and it will not look pretty, and it certainly won't be safe to play on. So this has got to be done in optimum conditions. One thing that I would be conscious of is the demand of contractors' time at the moment. So contractors are very busy. So if you are looking to get works done, please don't expect to be able to just ring up a contractor and say, can you come tomorrow? These guys have serious workloads, especially those that have this sort of machinery. And you'll may likely be put onto a list where you may be waiting to have this sort of work done. So if you are thinking about doing it, it's worth booking in and making sure that you've got your slots and that you're on their list should the conditions improve. So that's the number one tip, decompaction. So these are the machines that you can do to, well, you can use to do it. So on the right, there is what would be classed as a vertidrain. A vertidrain is just a model of machine. These were the guys who came up with the idea of tying in with a heave. There are other models of this machine, but this is a form of decompaction, what I would call deep tine aeration. If I wanted to classify it even more, deep tine aeration with a heave. So it goes into the soil, drives down, and creates that fracture like on the slide before. The typical depths, it can depend on what's below. Some clubs can only go 150 mil. Some clubs you can be driving down sub 200 mil. It depends on your native soils and your different soil horizons, what you've got below. Because the tines on these things are not cheap. They're quite expensive and they wear down when they hit abrasive materials such as sand, etc. They wear down quite quickly. So I know that people, when they use them, are always conscious of what depth they go to because of the wear that it puts on the machines. The machine on the left is a shockwave. So this is quite a popular machine in the grassroots world. This is one that, certainly in the professional world as well, this is one that I would recommend that you typically do pre-season. It's not really something, especially if you're on heavy clay-based soils, it's not something that you would use at the moment, because what I'm conscious of, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people in the same thinking along the same lines, is if the temperatures get up, if you've got heavy clay-based soil, this basically is a linear aerator that drives into the soil in a slit and creates a slit across the pitch. Now, if it does dry up too much, what may happen is if there's this, as the soil starts to dry out and starts to shrink, is you can be left with some nice grooves down your pitch. I actually saw this happen last year on a club, and there were some serious grooves that were nearly 50 mil wide in certain areas. So obviously becomes a hazard. The pitch becomes unplayable, and unless you can get quite a large volume of water on, which is quite difficult for a lot of clubs, it can be hard to actually recover from that. So I would tend to try and avoid this from now. If conditions are not as bad as what we've seen this year, which rainfall, etc., and you can get on mid-season, it's really good to vary these two. But I would the shockwave is sort of an operation that I would look to do from sort of back end of September through to February at the latest. The vertidrain is a autumn in summer, in season, so throughout the season, and an end of season operation. So these are the two forms of decompaction that are commonly used in grassroots sports, and that a lot of contractors have that they can use on your pitches. I would say I'm a big fan of the vertidrain. I think that what should I say? The solid tine aerator. I'm a big fan of that, but I also see the benefit of alternating the two, because they do, although they're technically both decompact, they can go to different depths and they have different effects, so they can both be useful. So if you are currently just using something with solid tines on, and you want to alternate that as you go into next year, the Shockwave is a good thing to look at, pending your soils are suitable. But if you've got any questions about that, I'm happy to answer that on another day. If you drop me an email or give me a call, which I do. I'll provide my contact details at the end of this. So I'm going to move on to onto the next slide. If my computer will work. There we go. Excellent. So we've got aeration that I'm going to move on to next. This should not be confused and is no replacement for decompaction. With sports turf pitches, a lot of the compaction happens in the top 150 mil. Well, 100 to 150 mil. So when you get players running over it all the time, you cause compaction in that area. These are supposed to, well, we're not supposed to. These operations offer longevity to your aeration, to your decompaction, sorry. So your vertidrain and your shockwaving, what these do is they open up that soil again. So imagine if you get loads of loads of players playing on the pitch, walking over, trampling everything down, you can't see your holes where your vertidrain or your shockwave has been. What this actually does is opens up the soil again to allow a little bit of longevity of them holes, because below that they will still stay open. It's just the top 100 to 150 mil that they're closing. So this machine on the left is a Sysis quadruplay. There's many different manufacturers of these. There's not just Sysis. These were just the pictures that I found when I was looking online. So this machine is probably one of my favorite tools in the industry. It's fantastic for grassroots clubs. What it actually does is it's a 4-in-1 tool. So you're not just doing one operation, you can do 4 at once. So at the front, you've got the spring tines. So these tines are almost giving you a light scarification. So they're helping just break up any grass clippings that you've returned to the surface. They can help disperse worm casts. They can help just thin out your sward so you can get a little bit more of an effective ball roll and a bit more of a smoother ball roll as well. The next attachment that it's got is the spring the spring slits. So these actually the star slits, these actually drive into the soil 100 mil deep. Well, you can go from 50 to 200 mil deep, depending how deep you want to go. But they actually drive into that top 100 mil just to keep it open. This thing can be used pretty much every week if conditions allow. So it's not something you can obviously do in wet conditions. You can only do it when conditions are suitable. These sort of machines are all available on the grant funding. So the grant funding that you can get through the Football Foundation. This is one of the typical recommendations that comes along in your pitch power report. So the 4-in-1 combination tool. This is the machine on the left. So it's a tractor attachment, doesn't have to require any power. It's just literally trails along the ground and does the operation. So the next one is a roller. So we by no means want to be rolling pitches with any heavy rollers. This is a light roller. So this is designed to lightly roll the pitch, just to try and take out any slight little depressions that there may be across the surface. This machine overall weighs about half a ton, so it's not heavy. It's quite a light machine. And at the back, you've got the brush, which the brush is excellent for dispersing worm casts, just allowing the base of the grass plant to breathe and allowing a bit of air circulation. What I also think it's really good for is that when people run over the pitch during the winter, all the grass sits down. The grass has no reason to respond because there's reduced daylight hours. There's also not the temperatures it requires to be able to stand up and try and get some sugar and some food through photosynthesis. So it tends to stay sat down. So by standing it up, you are helping present the surface, helping to not let them grasses get, I would say, suffocated by soil from the surface. and getting trampled in. It just allows them to breathe a little bit more. This is an excellent tool, as I say. There's not just Sysis that manufacture them. There's other manufacturers. But yeah, that has been throughout this winter a real eye opener for clubs that have had them. You can certainly tell, especially for those that use them regularly and are using them weekly. You can see instantly when you walk on site if somebody's got one. Well, I can, and I think they're an excellent tool. The one on the right is also available for grant funding. So this is a maxi slit. So this is also manufactured by Sysis, but there are other manufacturers available. So this typically goes to a little bit deeper than the quadruple A. So the quadruple A slits that you can see, the star slitter there that goes to 100 mil. This can go anything to about 240-ish, 240 mil. So this can actually drive down in some cases deeper than your solid tine aeration holes. So this is a really good machine for just aerating the surface and just allowing it to breathe, for allowing water to move through the soil. This machine I would not use throughout the summer. Obviously the surface will be hard, but for in season, for when you go into next season, if you've got one of these, and we don't have the conditions like we have had similar to this year, these can be excellent for just regular aeration that the clubs can do themselves if they've got their own machinery. It's a nice thing to do, and almost a luxury, but it's not something really that's worth, if you wanted to and you're in a really wealthy position as a club, you could pay a contractor to come in every fortnight or every month. I mean, you could even do it every week. One thing that if you've got both of these, you can alternate and do them one week, the one the other. Or if you're even really more if you're wanting to have even more of a bigger improvement, what you could do is only be using the slitter when you're managing seeing what weather could be heading over in the future. For those who are looking out at fixtures and what you may have, nice thing to do if you're expecting a little bit of flash flooding the night before a game, etc., just to allow water to move into the soil. So this is an excellent machine. Very popular on the grant funding. A lot of clubs have got them, and those that do speak highly of them. But yeah, these two would be typical maintenance operations that can be done in house, because they're not PTO driven, so they're not driven by the tractor. They're just not trailed by it. Yeah, they're both excellent bits of kit. So these are not to be confused, as I said, with decompaction. So if you're doing any of these, don't think that you're decompacting this pitch. Decompaction should ideally be done twice a year. I would say that's the number one recommendation. You need to be doing that minimum once a year. If you're going to choose a time, if you can only afford to do it once a year, I would be doing it at the beginning of the season. But ideally, you want to be doing one now to open up to allow the surface to recover. So as we move on, I thought I'd talk to you about seed application methods and the way that seed's applied. So we've got two different ways that we can apply seed here. So we've got disc seeder, or we've got a dimple seeder. The way this is quite important. The amount of times that I saw clubs last year, so it's coming into what I would class as a seeding window from any time from now. Temperatures aren't far off where we need them to be. We just need the pitches to dry out to be able to do that. Working across sport myself, I often see clubs say, well, we can't seed till the end of the season, until everybody stops, but it's not always the case. You can be a little bit more proactive. It's better to have some success rather than no success and do it like I saw last year when temperatures soared in May, June, and people were trying to seed clubs and they had no seed pitches and they had no success with any germination rates. So to be able to get germination, we need to be able to get seed to soil contact. Without creating a seed bed, we can't do that. These two machines both create seed beds. So on the left, you've got a dimple seeder. So these little spikes at the front would dimple the ground, and at the back you can see there's a brush that would brush the seed into the hole, and then at the back you've got a roller to just seal it up so that the grass is the grass seed is set at the right height. So for perennial ryegrass, which is what we use in football, the ideal species that we would like, and the one that we'd like to see, the one that's more tolerant and more hard wearing to football wear and tear. We would ideally like to seed it from 5 to 10 millimeters. So you can set this machine up to be able to ensure that it goes 5 to 10 millimeters in the ground. If you've got enough pitches and you're keen enough, these machines are available on the grant funding to be able to enable you to do it yourself. They are fairly expensive. You can pick machinery up second hand, but it does need to have a 12-month warranty. So it would need to come with that for any kit that's bought. But yeah, these are both great machines for driving seed into the soil and almost drilling it into the ground. So on the right, you've got a disc seeder that creates a slot. You can see the seed sits in the top in the little hopper and drops down, and then once it's in that, once the seed has dropped into the hole, the roller comes up and closes the surface and allows the seed to be set at the right depth. Just to give you some form of idea, if you distribute seed over the surface, so if you distribute it manually and don't create any seed bed, what you can actually do by doing that is reduce germination rates by up to 25%. So you might spend £100 on a bag of grass seed, you've lost 25% of that already. Given in mind that majority of seed, you already lose about 20% initially. So if you spend £100 on a bag of seed, you may lose 15 to £20 of that. Distribute it over the surface, you've lost £40. If you're doing this, you're guaranteed to get a lot better success rates. So this is typically something that seed application is something I would expect a contractor to do, unless you were just repairing certain areas such as high wear areas, goal mouths. If you look back at the last slide that I have, so I'll just knock it back. The quadruplay here is actually really good for creating seed beds because you've got the spring tines at the front, so you can go over any surface that has not got any grass, and you can actually create if you set the slitter at the right depth, create a nice little seed bed, and you can also use the brush to brush it in. So they're a really good bit of kit for just doing high wear areas. I would not really recommend to do a full pitch with them. I would certainly be looking to do a full pitch with something like this, to be able to drive and drill the seed at the right depth, to be able to ensure that you get the best for your germination, for your pitches. So timing of seed application methods is challenging. So it's really been it was more challenging last year, especially as I said, when clubs were seeding in May, June, July. We had no rainfall, and seed was not really striking. The danger is it's not actually putting the seed can be put into the ground dormant, but the danger is that if I don't know, say it takes 10 days for perennial ryegrass to germinate, and you get into the first leaf stage, it's only a young baby. So if temperatures get up, it needs moisture, and if you don't get moisture, it dies. So it's difficult to actually look into the future and think, can I ensure that we're going to get 3 or 4 weeks of rainfall where I'm going to get good germination rates from my seed, to be able to get it up to like 2-3 leaf stage where it's established and it can withstand the drought conditions. But unless we get those weeks of rainfall, you've got to question if it's worth doing. The best success I saw this year were clubs that last year were clubs that overseeded in March and April and September and October. They tended to have the best success. I was kind of telling clubs to look at splitting their application. So if you were going to put, say, using one of these machines, so using a disc seeder, you were going to put 35 grams per square meter on, can you half it to 17.5 and do it twice? I understand you pay contractor costs and extra costs on machines, but you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, and at least you know that if it don't work first time, you've got the second time to be able to do that. And people always say, well, then what if about overseeding in season? Well, to be honest with you, I think that if you've got protection there, so if you've got reasonable cover, which I can imagine quite a lot of clubs will, for those that have only played on the condition pitches when they're suitable, you've actually got cover to protect it. So the grass that's already established will protect what you put into the ground and it'll stop it from being disturbed. And actually, football players can kick it in. So as long as you're rotating your pitches, I'm not talking about giving them a huge rest. It's better to have something rather than have nothing. So to give you some form of idea, this is some research by Barenberg, who are a seed supplier. They have grass seeds now. So what's happened over recent years is that we've started exploring grasses from other regions and within different countries. And as you can imagine, as we go up into Northern Europe and into Southern Europe and into America, etc., climate changes. And what we're finding is that some of these grasses can actually withstand different temperatures better than others because they're in their native environment and they're used to that. So by doing that, grass seed within the last 20 years has jumped on quite a lot. Within the last 5 years, I'd say even more. So yeah, grass seed is moving fast. So we've now got grass that can good football perennial ryegrass that can germinate from 5 degrees plus. So it's not very quick at establishing, but if you've got soil temperatures, they're going to stay consistent and we're not going to get frost and we're not going to get snowy conditions and they're not going to get extremely saturated. There is grass seed now, and there's pretty much giving a seeding window here of anytime now. So you're looking towards spring from the end of March to the end of November. It's a good thing to try and do at this time of year, I think, because weeds are starting to establish, so they're going to get optimum conditions. They're going to start taking all the moisture. They're going to start taking all the sunlight. They're going to start to seed, and they're going to start to become a little bit more dominant in your pitches. So being proactive by doing things like this can actually maybe save you down the line of potentially looking in a few months' time. I want to spray a selective herbicide to kill all the weeds on the pitch. Well, potentially, if I seeded earlier this year and the grasses are stronger than weeds, they could take ownership of the pitch and make up a larger percentage of that grass cover. So yeah, this is just opening your eyes really into the way things are going, and the way things are heading. So as I said, as soon as pitches dry out now, we're not far off being able to seed. So if you are in a position where your pitches are dry enough, it's something to potentially look at. Especially if you've got machines like quadruplayers, you can potentially look at high wear areas. And if you've got other bits of kit that you do want to look at doing, but if not, then I would look at seeding full pitches. I would look at contractors. I'm going to show you a couple of slides of some other pictures of some pitches as well as we go through this. So types of grass seed, as I said, there are many different suppliers and grass seeds coming forward. So this is a picture that on the one on the right that I got sent. So you might look on the right and think that's fantastic grass cover. There's a little bit of moss. All these grasses down here are on the right hand side. So this is literally just a different changing grass species. So when somebody turns up and says that pitch looks nice and green, it looks really well, that's because that pitch there has the grasses that are wear tolerant for football. They can withstand drought a lot more. They look healthy, from a visual perspective. They really look a lot clearer and a lot more defined, a lot greener, to summarize it the best probably. But on the right there, you've got moss, you've got weed grasses, agricultural grasses, etc. As I said, perennial ryegrass has been crossbred. Different brands are on. Different cultivars of seed are available. So we now have something like 4,000 cultivars of perennial ryegrass, where we used to have about 10. So things are moving forward fast, and the type of grass seed that you're choosing that's applied is key as well. For those that aren't aware, seed has sell-by dates, it has use-by dates, and it's almost worth checking that your seed that you're applying is within dates. It's all got to be stored at the right temperature to ensure that it doesn't chip, which basically means it starts to establish and it's been put in optimum conditions, and it's not being kept dry, it's not being kept in cool conditions, and it's put into a condition where it could potentially start to establish. So that's just giving you some form of visual in terms of what I would class. That is literally just the seeding line that you can see down the side of the pitch. So that's where it was drill seeded to. That's not any other line but a drill seeding line. So yeah, that's the type of grass seed that we're looking to sow. So these are just a couple of suppliers, well, 3 suppliers that I took bags of seed off. Just to give you an idea, they're all sports seed, specialist seeds, elite sports seed, specialist seeds. They're titled on the bag. They are not your tip seed that I see people using. That's maybe from Wilkinson's, although that's gone bust now. Actually, Tesco's, B&Q, that sort of thing. It's actual proper sports turf seed. So yeah, this is a big thing, and I think the way that things are going for a more sustainable future, as we're seeing, potential restrictions may come in on chemical inputs, on fertilizer inputs. As more will be expected of clubs. I think if you are using contractors, it's worth asking what seed you're putting on and what rate. Quite frequently, I'll see invoices come in. They give no description of the type of seed that they've used. It'll just say overseeded. Great. Well, there's lots of different grass species. There's lots of different cultivars. What did you actually use, and what rate did you put it on at? I've seen over the time that have been seen seed used from golf courses that's used for fine turf, golf greens, etc. It's been put on by clubs that's not suitable for the wear and tear of football. And I've also seen horticultural mixes used that's not suitable for football. So yeah, it's a big thing. And for those that don't know, I'll maybe pass this on to the guys at the county FAs that are on the call. There is a booklet that you can get that lists all the cultivars that are suitable for football, pretty much like a grass seed Bible, as I would call it. And that's available online. It's called the BSPB. It's a really good book, actually. It lists so all that data is come from trials, so it'll rate the grass on. Is it drought tolerant? Can it take close mowing? How wear tolerant is it? So what we tend to do is we mix these so you would normally put like 3 or 4 cultivars in a bag. So one would have really good visual aspects, one would be really drought tolerant, one would be able to take the wear and tear of football, and one might be really tolerant to some form of shade or something like that. So I mean, if you're looking at the sport overall, this is something that happens at every level, professional level. You obviously think the stadiums are enclosed, etc. They'll want to be a little bit more tolerant to shade and things. It might for those grounds that have got that are almost like a shoebox, really. Yeah, so this is a huge thing, and it's not that much more expensive to get the right grass seed. This sort of grass seed retails at about, obviously you don't pay VAT on seed, but retails around about £100, which is what I would expect to pay for a bag of seed. You can pay £20 more and you can get better grass seed. You can pay another £30 more and you can get even better grass seed. But for the majority of clubs, what you want, it ranges anything from, I would say, depending where you go, 80 to £100 for a very good bag of grass seed that is the right one that we're looking for. So when you get in there, for those of you who've got pitch power reports and you look at the pitch power total, and it says like £1,200-1,300 to overseed, it's because we're expecting, we want to be using 8 to 12 bags. That would be a full 35 grams per square metre on a full size pitch overseed, depending on the size of your pitch. Or can you cut back and can you just use 4 bags? And can you, with the price of machinery, it'll vary. It depends on how much you use. But if you are going to do this to get this sort of effect, it does need to be across the full pitch. Hold on, see if I can move along every time I come on to what teams on it. So rates of application can vary, as I said. So this pitch on the left here tends to be one that's had a lot more wear down the central areas. So typically a grassroots club, almost the pattern is a triangle pattern. That's where a lot of the wear takes place. So if you are in this position on the left, you may want to be a little bit more conscious about overseeding some of them central areas while you're playing on them, because the grass will it's got no protection there, it's got no stability, it's likely just a bare surface. So you really need some rest to be allowed to give them some rest to be able to establish. Whereas if you're in the position on the right, bearing in mind the picture on the right was taken in the height of summer football gala, that has got very healthy grass coverage, and that's the sort of pitch that you could if it had the odd bit of wear here, you could potentially overseed that from, you know, when the pitch is dry and workable. And pending, obviously, I mean, ideally you'd want to cut first anyway before you start even thinking about overseeding. And getting that first cut is going to be, if you've not done so already, I'd imagine will be the top priority, because of the grass is starting to grow now. My first stint of grow off happened about 2 weeks ago. Certainly where I live in York, that's where I first saw indications of a growth. I know I've cut my lawn at home twice this year already, which is unusual. It was fairly long after the winter period, because I didn't get a cut on it because it got wet back end of last year. But anyway, it's, I suppose it's looking and assessing at what you can do to trying to keep the pitch in this condition. And I think the way by doing that, so the picture on the right, the way by doing that is overseeding twice a year. If you can afford to do it, it's a good thing to do. So yeah, just to give you some form of idea there on rates of application. So you could get away with potentially just on the pitch on the right putting 17.5 grams per square metre. A pitch on the left, you might have to, you know, you could go up to 40, 50 grams per square metre in your central areas there to be able to allow it to recover. So fertilizer, I've just taken a selection of bags here of fertilizer just to give you a little bit of an idea of how fertilizer works, really. So there's different products here from different providers. There's many different fertilizer reps, but I think what I wanted to do was just, I see quite often that people have used the wrong fertilizer, they've put it on the wrong rate, they don't know what they've put it on for, and they don't know what they're looking to achieve from it. So to give you some form of idea, this is a huge part of grass pitch renovations. So to enable to get the best out of your seed application, it needs some nutrition to be able to establish. So you would normally put some form of pre-seeding application down with your seed to allow the pitch to recover, to be able to give it the nutrients, because like us, it needs food, but not just food, it needs the right food to be healthy and to be well. So these are different fertilizers, as I said. So fertilizer rates can vary again. So you can look at potentially, if you look at a standard 11v11 pitch, adult pitch, you could look at anything from, I don't know, 6 to 15 bags of fertilizer that you can put down. So you can put it down at different rates. So that if you look at the picture, the first bag on the left, which is a Sportsmaster 977. So this fertilizer here, so when I see invoices all the time and it just says application of fertilizer, the first point I'm getting is what rate have they put, there's any contract to put that fertilizer down at. So have they put it down at 15 grams per square meter? Have they put it down at 40 grams per square meter? What's the application rate done? That is a big question, because that makes a massive impact on the growth. It's all right saying, well, they came and fertilized it, grand, but what did they put down? The first point I would make is that it's always good. You can get free soil tests by a lot of these. So some of these providers here that I've got here. So the one on the right is the company that sell that is Agrigem. Then you've got ICL, which is sold and distributed by ICL and also by East Riding Turf Care, and then you've got Rigby Taylor. So all these sort of companies will give you a free soil test. So they'd come down and give you a free soil test. They'd draw you up a fertilizer program, tell you what you need to put on at what rate. I've seen such a big impact on clubs that have gone down that road and they've taken more ownership of the fertilizer programs, so that they know that the contractor is applying the right fertilizer at the right rate. They're purchasing it and asking somebody to apply it. Some clubs doing it on their own now, because you can get tractor mounted fertilizer spreaders for about 500 quid. They are available on the grant funding, but obviously because of the cost of it, you can't just get the fertilizer spreader on its own. It would need to be part of a wider application. So this one on the left, so this is another thing that I see. So what type of fertilizer did they put down? That lasts 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. You get 6 weeks out of that, typically. The next one is a 6 to 8 week feed. So the Rigby Taylor bag, the blue one. The next one is a 5 to 6 month feed. So you're getting a lot more for your money there. And the other one is a feed for a 20-10-10, which is, I would say, it has a place in sports turf industry. Still used frequently, but it needs to be used for a reason, not just let's put this down. This is one that typically makes grass grow like mad. The reason for that is because it's designed to feed horses. So we want to give them the food as fast as we can. Want to get plenty of nitrogen nutrition in there to make the grass grow fast so they can get lots of food. So these bags, the way that they work is they're numbered, as you can see. So if you look at the Rigby Taylor one, I'm just going to pick that out, the Delta Sport mix. So that's got 12, the first number, that's 12% nitrogen. It's got 4% phosphorus, which is the next one, 8% potassium, and then it's got 0.5 of iron in there. Iron's really good for greening up the plant. So the 12 for the nitrogen, that is as I said, it's key for growth. That's the bit that gives you the big kick. And then you've got the 4, which is phosphorus, which is really good for rooting depth. Then you've got 8. This is a key one. So this is one that's really good for cellular development. So it's really good for drought resistance, allowing the plant to control its water rates, what it's taking in, what it's releasing, etc. Very, very good for that. So as we're coming into, I know a lot of clubs will use, so potassium in an element is expressed as K. And I know a lot of professional clubs and other different facilities that are going on a visit, they will use almost like a K feed to be able to make the plant a little bit more tolerant to drought as we're heading into drought conditions. So a key thing to be conscious of there. It's not going to be if you get the right grass seed, you get the right amount of nutrition, and the grass plant is in a strong place, you're on to a winner. And then you can only do what you can do from a water aspect. But these are two things that need to be conscious of. So yeah, this is a wide range of fertilizer, and this by no means is trying to show you different products. So the way that the best way to look at this, the way this works, is if so the shorter feeds, they're more of a hit. So like you've got your 4 there to 12 week hit. That works where it's released by moisture. So moisture would go into the soil, it'd rain, and you get flusher growth. This one here, so the Sierra blend, the one that's 5 to 6 months, the reason it lasts so long is because of the way it's coated. So it's coated in polymers that release, and the best way I can describe that is it needs heat as well as moisture, so it almost works like a tea bag. So if you drop a tea bag into a cup of cold tea, nothing would happen into cold water, should I say, into cold tea. But if you drop a tea bag into cold water, nothing would really happen. You put it in boiling hot water, it would start the osmosis process, and you would start to see some nutrition coming out of some tea. So that's the way that it works, exactly the same way. So yeah, that's a range of fertilizer. So I'll move on to my my next slide. I think the key thing is here is hopefully that's opened your eyes to realise if you are using contractors, what sort of things to be checking: seeding application rates, seeding types, fertilizer application rates, and fertilizer types. So another tip for me would be repair methods. Always difficult at this time of year and through the season, but if you can, those are higher wear areas or those areas that have suffered from waterlogging, siltation, etc., maybe surface runoff as we got some build up of silt, worm casts, etc. There is different tools available to be able to repair. So you've got the fork. I love the fork. There's a reason that say that they are the groundsman's favorite tool, walking around prodding the fork in, get a good idea of the feel for the soil and what's going on underneath. Because you can have the best grass, but unless you've got decent soil, healthy soil that can breathe, it's not too compact, you won't get much success on the surface. The other one is a turf doctor. So the one on the left is a turf doctor that goes in, got 4 sides, drives down into the soil. These are really good for pest damage. So for those clubs that suffer a little bit more with like animal damage, rather than actually digging a hole with a spade, you can actually go in. These take all 4 corners, and so you could go and take somewhere out of play. You could go and get a nice sort of turf, and you could put it into the pitch. And anything that you've dug out would obviously be filled in the area where you've removed it from. But yeah, they're a really good actual bit of kit for especially clubs that suffer with mold damage as well. Quite a for the people who unfortunately suffer with pest damage, good bits of kit. So go mouth repairs, I'm sort of going to hopefully round up in about 15-20 minutes or so, and then I'm happy to take any questions when I've finished. So we've got goal mouth repairs. So the one on the left could really do with a rest. Seen a lot of wear. Whereas the one on the right, if you're in that position, you're in quite a healthy position. So this is looking at trying to keep it. I mean, now hopefully you've realised that the seed, for those that didn't know, that germinates at low temperatures. Can we be a little bit more proactive through the season? So can we try and go out, try and see if we can fork? I understand it takes time. I understand it takes effort. But it's exactly the same. I spent a long time working on a golf course where we'd see divots, pitch mark repairs. We would expect that people would repair them. And I almost get that same feeling with goal mouths. It'd be nice to see some players, participants, coaches, referees, etc., going around and repairing the pitch when the game's finished. Probably a long way away from that, but it would be nice, because once you've lost your stability and once you start losing your grass coverage, you then get addition effects, and then it becomes really expensive to put it right. But if you're a little bit more proactive and try and keep it like the one on the right, you can put yourself in a good position. But yeah, no, just a little bit of an idea about goal mouth repairs. I mean, you can turf goal mouths. I wouldn't really recommend it, because it's especially if you can't get access to water, because we don't know what weather conditions are going to come our way, and seed is a lot more cheaper as well to be able to repair, unless you've got some serious dishing or some other issues. Seeding is the best option. So scarification, I'll touch on this point. So scarification is not something really that I would recommend unless the pitch hasn't really been played on for a while, or you've got a excessive thatch layer because you've put far too many nutrients on and used far too much fertilizer, and you've been cutting regularly, and maybe the wrong fertilizer. That's sometimes why this is recommended. So we've got two ways we can do this. So you may see the machine on the left. That is that's what, like a terror rake. So that's pretty similar to the spring tines that I showed you earlier on the quadruplay. So this would go across, just try and help break down the surface a little bit more, and try and just pull out any weeds, good cultural weed control. It would try and pull out any tufts of grass, wrong grasses, etc., and just try and thin out the sward a bit, because you don't want to. The best way I describe thatch is it becomes a cushion, so it becomes like a restrictor. So if you get like a sponge and stick it on top of the surface, it holds water. So we don't really want too much thatch. It's really difficult to remove it all in a grassroots world. But typically most pitches have, like, I would say 5 to 10 millimeters. That's pretty acceptable. You get into 20-30 millimeters, you're going to have serious water infiltration rate restrictions. The one on the right, I would expect a contractor to have. I mean, the one on the left is, I say, you could use your quadruplay to get that sort of effect, or similar, some form of combination tool, but it's just slightly little bit more aggressive. The one on the right is an Amazon, so that's a scarifier, and it's got a back box. Typically used on places that haven't been played on for a while. I was looking at that picture, I'll be really hesitant in scarifying with that in that weather. It's sort of you've got to be sort of be a little bit aggressive with it, and it can be a slow process to recover if done that way. So unless you see that on the pitch power report, or you feel that there really is a need, and if you've got a drainage system, it can certainly be a benefit every couple of years, but just to allow the surface to connect to the pipe. But yeah, these are it's not something I would stand out recommend you to go and spend a lot of money on to be able to have done, unless it was for a specific reason. So weed control, as I said, can we start thinking now about seeding? Looking at pitch there on the right that we've taken at so you can see that these are all desirable grasses. They're all perennial ryegrass that we're looking for, that I can see within that picture. Maybe the odd bit, but I mean, percentage wise, there 95% of that is desirable grasses. Looking at the one on the left, this is something that I would see that's been poorly maintained. So you've got the what I can see here. So this weed is Weeds always tell a story of what's been going on a pitch, maybe over the last few years. And this weed here is called plantain, typically a sign that the pitch has not been vertidrained or not been decompacted for I'd say quite a large amount of time, or it's holding water. So these are very invasive. They're very shallow rooted, and they're very broad, as using the name broadleaf plantain. And they really do take up, because they're so shallow rooted, they take a lot of nutrients out of the soil. Because of how broad they are leaf wise, they take a lot of sunlight, and they can quite easily become quite invasive in the soil profile, the seed as well. And so they can soon start to travel into other areas by birds, players, machines, etc. So yeah, they're a weed. So these could actually be prevented by just doing more decompaction. Do we really need to spray a selective herbicide? You've also got clover in here, sign that there's a lack of nitrogen. Clover is a legume that can actually turn atmospheric nitrogen into a usable plant nitrogen that it can use to feed itself. There's not many of them around. So yeah, that's indicating that the soil is not in a healthy position, and it's putting itself into a situation where it's can get what it needs to be able to stay as grassland. So yeah, there's different ways. I mean, scarification is good for early weed establishment. I would not say when you've got this far down the line, but chemical restrictions are, I can see them changing in the coming years, and they're already getting a little bit weaker. And I imagine we'll be facing further challenges with these in the coming future. So to try and get yourself in the best possible position you can. Top dressing. So top dressing is something I would recommend if you've got really bad surface levels. Quite frequently over the summer, over this last summer and over this winter, I've seen quite a lot of pitches that have top dressed, and they've created a camber because they've only done central areas. So it really should be done at a uniform rate across the whole of the pitch. I mean, to give you some idea for like an application of top dressing, 30 ton ish, you're looking at like £1,500 to £2,000 to be able to have that and apply it. It's an expensive operation. 30 ton will not really touch much. You're not going to change the soil profile overnight. By doing that, you're pretty much adding like 2 or 3 mil to the surface. Not a lot. So if you are looking to top dress to potentially change native soils to more sandier soils, it's a long process. The best time to do this is if you really have got uneven surface levels. If you've probably played a game when you maybe shouldn't have done and you regret that, it's a good thing to do to be able to level out the pitch. So it'd typically be put on with a twin disc spreader. You can see there, that's a twin disc spreader on the back of a tractor, and then it'd be brushed in after. Ideally, it'd be done after aeration so that you can work it into the soil. And you can actually slightly, by aerating, so people who heavy rail, they're not really going to achieve much, but by aerating, you actually fracture the subsoil. So you may get a little bit of soil movement. So this is really good as well for if you're getting that soil movement, slight soil movement through vertidraining, and then you're top dressing after, you're just opening up the soil a bit. But yeah, this is something that if you've got a drainage system is really crucial. For those of you who've got pipe drainage systems that were maybe installed in the last 10 years, etc., that are really active and they're good, to be able to keep that connection between the surface and the pipe, you need to top dress regularly. So you should be top dressing once a year. That's pretty much my recommendations around top dressing. I would not like to see clubs going and spending the full maintenance grant of £3,200 on top dressing. It's not really money well spent. You've not really achieved a great deal apart from the slightest of adaptation to your soil analysis, but it would be minimal in the grand scheme of things. So from what I've been talking about here, this is a case study from a club over Hullway. So this is the same pitch, the one on the right. So I always like to put things into perspective to show that there is a method behind my madness. So this pitch, they were using a contractor who, I'm not saying this is every contractor because there's some very good ones that operate in and around Yorkshire and in Nottinghamshire, etc. some that I have very good relationships with, but they were using the seed that they were using was not the right type of grass seed. So they were using a forage grass seed for agriculture, and they were putting on fertilizer that was for agriculture, and they were having no success. I went across, and I went across with one of the seed suppliers in that area met me, and one of them also supplies fertilizer, and we went across to the site, and I had a look around. And I said, look, we need to come up with a suitable plan. So we went with a plan, we drew it up, we did the renovations last October, and this is what happened. So that was like pretty much 2 weeks after the pictures looked like that. And that was by just slightly changing. I mean, it looks nice because it's been cut and it's striped. That shows that it's. But they'd had real big trouble with drain runs and collapsing, soil settlement, etc. Over time. But yeah, this is a very good case study of doing the right thing. They were wasting a lot of money on sand that they didn't really need to waste. Well, they didn't really need to spend, should I say? And they'd also not really done not much aeration. So I said, get that number one priority, aeration, get the right grass seed, and if we can afford it, get the right fertilizer. So we went along that path, and ended up with what you can see on the left, which was a huge change. And those pitches have stood up fairly well throughout the winter. Lost games because of wetness, as everybody has, but and all the water that we've had, but they've been really good. So yeah. Hope that gives you some form of idea. That's pretty much me. I'm happy to take any questions. Leon's on the call, and I know Chris is on here. I don't know if Michelle's joined yet, but I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm happy to see what people have to say. Hopefully that was useful, and hopefully you found that interesting. I am available as well via email, which I'll type my email address in the chat if anybody wants to contact me. After this, I am a little bit busy at the moment with it being the mandatory pitch power window. So if it's nothing amazingly urgent, then if you could, yeah, but yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Do you want to rest your voice?
I would love to rest my voice. Yes.
Yeah, there's been a few bits that have come in through chat. So I've answered a few bits, but what the functionality we've got, we're running on a webinar, guys. So if you do want to ask any questions over mic, you are all locked at the moment. So just use the raise hand functionality, and I'll be able to take you off mic, so you can ask those questions. But obviously, I use the chat as a lot of you are at the moment. There's some throughout, Chris. So yeah, Nige just asked if it will be recorded. I guess it will. I've mentioned that one. Adam asked, just during around sort of the machinery that you were showing, any idea on sort of estimates on prices, and obviously it can range depending on what supplier you choose to go to.
Yeah, so
purchase it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've pretty much touched it there, really.
Yeah.
Why are we not getting any echo in here?
I'm speaking off yours.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the webinar. Adam also asked, just on that last Hull example on the case study, did you say 2 weeks difference between those two pictures? Was that what you said, or was it quite a lengthy process to take it from picture?
No, it wasn't much longer than it was about 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, it wasn't long. It was because it was done in times when the basically conditions were perfect. It was pretty much, as I said, back end of September, October. We were having just about right amount of rainfall. The seed established very quickly. The fertilizer took effect after 10 days. The seed started to establish after like 10 to 15 days. So yeah, it really did start to
quick turnaround. Yeah, as we say usually with any sort of bits that people can do to their pitches, it doesn't take long to actually.
It doesn't.
Difference, both from the things you can see, but also
conditions are optimal.
Underfoot stuff as well. Yeah, cheers, James. We'll just say thank you to you, Chris. Really good information, really useful. One from Kabir. Chris, when do you suggest is best to sand?
Best time to sand? It depends on your rate. So your rate of application does vary. I'd say if you were going to put 30 tons down, you could pretty much. The thing with sand is it's very abrasive, so you cannot put it down in warm conditions, because it's almost like if you imagine rubbing sandpaper on your skin, that's pretty much what it does to the grass plant. So sanding applications, I would say, if you're going to look to do some form of decompaction, which hopefully you will do first, a decompact once you know that the surface is not saturated and you can work the soil, work the sand into the soil, that would be, I would probably say April time, maybe mid to late April. And then again, if you wanted to do it in September, October.
Yeah, we were on about it today around that document we saw
Yeah.
that we shared before. I'll share that again after with the post comments to this, with a bit of a timeline on when to do certain things, when to apply certain things. Obviously, each site's very different, and obviously weather conditions, but that will give you a bit of an idea. So I will share that again as well with the rest of the comms. So we've got a few more thank yous. One from Adam. Jake's just asked, is there a standard specification of seed mix we can give to our contractors? In the past, we have relied on our contractor who we trust, but it would be nice for them to know that we have some knowledge. I think it's just that reassurance now that we always say to have that knowledge behind you, like you're giving tonight, so people know what contractors and
I don't think, well, I don't, well, I hope that you've come from this session is just to open your eyes, really. And it's by no means, I mean, I would just, the best thing you could do, and I said this to a club the other week, is ask them, every bag of seed comes with a receipt stuck to it. Just that, all you'd need to potentially do is just ask them for the DEFRA certificate, and then go and Google it, or ask them to just send you a picture of the DEFRA certificate or something like that. And then you can go and see what type of seed they're using. I wouldn't exactly, specification of seeds is quite I would say it's quite in depth. It's not something that you could just touch on, but it's more just understanding that there is different things. And I suppose I would definitely 100% sure make sure they're using perennial ryegrass, and I would 100% make sure that the cultivars are registered with. If you look on, you just Google this, Jake. I'll put in there BSPB. So if you just have a look at that, that is you look at that BSPB turf seeds, it'll come up, and you'll be able to see the 2024 update. You'll be able to go back years as well and have a look at different bits and pieces.
Another one from Jake. We want to reseed one of our pitches once the ground is suitable, but it seems to have got one particular type of weed that is doing really well at the moment. Maybe one that likes saturated soil. Should we seed or kill off the weed first once the soil is firmed up?
So I would seed first. The reason I do that is because weeds will probably start to take more of a hold, and you want to be typically seeding and then not weed killing for about 8 to 12 weeks after, depending on which type of selective herbicide you use. So seed first, then weed. Probably weeds that you could maybe start weeding like August, September wide, but by weed I presume in application of selective.
Yeah. Just a follow-on question from Kabir around obviously it's obviously sanding or top dressing. Thank you. 30 ton around one pitch. Around the rule of thumb.
I mean, 30 ton one pitch. That's the minimum application I would expect if you're looking at an 11v11 pitch. You know, I mean, you could get away with 20 ton. But as I say, it's a very expensive thing, and I wouldn't just be doing it for the sake of doing it. You need to have a purpose. Why are you actually applying? 30 ton. I mean, as I say, that $2 grand. What are you doing that for? There's got to be a reason behind it. It's not just. It's a good cultural method, and it's a very nice luxury to have, but it would not be my number one recommendation to take away from tonight. That'd be for sure.
Yeah. Question from Adam. We have a dual marked 7v7, 9v9 pitch that looks extremely worn, especially down the centre, we expect. Approximately 30% grass coverage, about right this time of year. Fields, looks like turfs or patches of grass that are well elevated above the soil profile, possibly not explaining this well, but would a resurface or application of topsoil improve this?
Just let me process that. So what would be the typical thing to do there is you might be in a position where you actually do need to scarify or surface groom just to try and break up them tufts. And if they are well elevated, it's likely maybe that you've got some undesirable grasses in there that we're not looking for in a football pitch. So you may want to try and just thin them out or get rid of them altogether, which if you're scarified, that would do so. And then make sure you seed with the right grass. Topsoil, an application of top dressing wouldn't really do anything to it. It'd probably just get caught up in its sheath at the base of the plant. So yeah, I'd look to potentially scarify more or groom more, surface groom more.
Two more come in. Just one from James. Contractors keep quoting for gold mouse as separate costs to overseeding. What steps do we need to take to renovate gold mouse other than overseeding? Anything else that happens on gold mouse?
Gold mouse, if you let them get dished, they're an expensive repair. So once they start to lose, what happens is that once you start to lose grass cover, I mean, you pretty much go to a beach, a links golf course, sand blows across. So as soon as soil start to dry out, get dished, they get disturbed, and once that happens, and you get that little bore within the soil, it becomes expensive to actually put them right, because you need to use the right. You would not just put any old topsoil on. It would have to be a specific one, especially if you're using a good contractor. And the gold mouth repairs, I would say typically £350 per gold mouth, can be as expensive as that. So as I said, look at different types of grass seed. Can we just go out this year and potentially buy a couple of bags of sand and a couple of bags of seed? I know Leon and I have been chatting today around these amenity providers that do offer this professional sports turf stuff, and can we put them in touch with you guys? And we're going to be putting together some reputable people that we can share with you. They could go out and you could potentially get a couple of bags of root zone. You could potentially go and get some seed, and you could do repairs yourself when you see that the next 7 to 10 days conditions are optimum. Or I would say that doing yourself, you might not feel you're up to it. But can you potentially get somebody else to do it for you, or etc.? Is there somebody at the club willing to do it?
And then last question. We've got a few more thank yous. Great. And then last question. Would you recommend sanding an area that is known to hold water or drain more slowly? The 18-yard box to the byline, for example.
It can be useful. So yeah, it can be useful, but what you want to do that first is verti-drain, or some form of aeration. So you want to try and open up that soil and try and work it in. But yeah, I mean, if it's holding water, I would say it's probably because there's a depression there and it's sat, and the surface levels probably change. And that's probably because of the wear and tear over the years, that it's maybe lost lost the actual natural gradient that it should have, and because of that you've got a depression, because it's lost grass cover. So yeah, it may be that it just needs building back up again to that level that it should be at, and yeah, that might be the way to do it. So the way to do that would be to top dress, but just in the central areas, it certainly is holding water. Yeah, you wouldn't see any more. All you'd see is that you may divert the water somewhere else if it's can slowly run off.
It's a few more thank yous. Mark's just said spot on presentation, Chris, great stamina. I think I lost myself by now. Cheers, Mark. And then another one from Adam. How do we remove a slope of a pitch? We have quite a noticeable gradient decline from one end to the other on our main pitch. So in wet conditions, one end looks and feels lush and playable, the other apparently likes to grow recessive. Yeah, seeing a few of them today as well.
Yeah, it's really difficult, that, to be honest with you, because without actually doing any major earthworks, you couldn't really remove a slope. You'd have to. What you would have to do is phrase more the pitch off, remove all the grass. You'd have to get some machinery on, grade it, cultivate it, and reseed it. And there's not really a lot you could do barring that.
Cool. A few more thank yous. Brilliant presentation. Great presentation, Chris. Cheers, Chris. Getting all the plaudits, mate. That's what we want.
Super.
Fantastic. Any
Thank you.
Final questions, guys? Give you a little bit more time. Like I say, we will send this out all after, along with the recordings. No, not everyone could get on tonight as well. And you might want to look back at a few bits, send out some more documents as well. And this won't be the last thing. We are meeting as a bit of a Yorkshire group over the next month or so to look at next season's workshops and education to just keep doing this moving forward.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. It's something we're looking to do. We've got a meeting, as Leon said, in the early part of May to see if we can work collectively together a little bit more throughout the next year.
First-hand expert. There you go.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you, Adam. Thank you.
Brilliant.
No, glad it was of use, and hopefully you can take something away. And if not, be able to do things yourself. You can ask questions of others.
Lovely.
Hopefully, I'll see you all at some point soon. For those of you, maybe if you want to call me, I'm happy to. I'll just drop my email address in here after this. So
I'll send that out after as well. But yeah, if you have to put that in, that'd be great. How to educate a stubborn pair of 70-year-old groundsmen. Adam is nice. Yeah, that might be one other clubs might have some good practice on, I guess.
Yeah.
Cherish them.
Yeah, please feel free to drop me an email if you've got any questions after this and anything comes to mind. But thank you very much for that. It was enjoyable. Cheers. Thank you.
Nice.
Good night.
Nice evening, guys.
Good night.